Welcome to the Dr. Tom Show. Today, I am really excited to have a great friend and uh, for the last, 10 years, mentor of mine and inspiration for me, Melissa Sandford. It's amazing. Melissa's history is incredible in terms of what she does because she pretty much does absolutely everything for everybody. And doesn't necessarily, Melissa, you don't necessarily get the credit you deserve. So I want to give you loads of credit today because you really do make this profession pretty much what it is here in the UK. So thank you very much for doing that. Melissa is the CEO of the United Chiropractic Association. She's married to a chiropractor, not a chiropractor herself. She's a mother of 6 children. She does Vitality CA training and Clarity calls. So pretty much everything to help people within their life and to help our profession. And it's an absolute honor that you've taken some time today. So I really do appreciate you being on the show, Melissa. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
So I am super excited about this topic because I think it's going to be frank, it's going to be honest, and it needs to be heard. And I'm not necessarily the person to talk about it, probably the person who needs to hear it. So we're going to get straight into it. We spoke a little bit before the show and we came up with a question. The first question I want to ask you is, can women have it all?
Oh, well, you already know my answer to this because I've told you. And and probably won't go down well with some people, but, my answer is no. Well, no and yes. I mean, yes, you can, just not all at the same time. And I think, so for me, why it's predominantly a no is that I think, certainly, I'm 51. So when I was raised in the, 70s and 80s, it was very much, you can have it all. You can have a career, you can be a mother, you can be a wife, you can be traveling, you got to have your girlfriends, you got to have this, you got to have that. And I think for me, I very much wanted to have it all. But then I think once I started having children, for you, depending on the mother that you want to be, but if you want to be at the school plays, if you want to breastfeed your child, if you want to have natural childbirth, if you want to raise your children naturally, that then means, that you have to be with them. So you can't be with them and work in a high-powered 9-to-5 job. You just can't, So it was really tough for me when I sort of came to that, kind of realization that if I wanted to be with my kids and raise them in the way that I wanted to, I couldn't work 9-to-5 in an employed kind of job. And, there are some careers where, you can work and have children. And so, I guess that's how I kind of fell into working more within the profession where I was able to take a job where I could work it around my family. And I think I was kind of told that kids have to fit into your life. Whereas if you want to raise children to their own rhythms, they can't fit into your life. It just doesn't work. You just end up with wrung out, unhappy mums and dads. That's what I see a lot. I see a lot of these really tired parents who are trying to ram it all in, ram in the work, ram in the attachment parenting, ram in the natural feeding, ram in all that stuff. And it's just such a clash of values. So I think now, my eldest is 26, my youngest is 8, and having done lots of different ways of doing it, I think looking back, for me, no, I don't think you can do it all at the same time. No, I don't think you can. And I think if you do, you compromise something, whether that's your marriage or your friendships. And for me, being a happy mum is the most important thing. And for me to be happy, I've got to be able to use my brain. I've got to be able to have some girlfriends. I've got to have a relationship with my husband. And I ultimately want to have a relationship with my kids. So they can't all be full-time jobs. That's 5 full-time jobs,
Yeah.
So you got to give somewhere, somewhere's got to give.
And I suppose this cultural shift we've seen over the last 2 decades, probably into the women having more power, having more opportunities, having not more potential. They've always had the potential, but then we have got to this advertisement culture of you can have it all, haven't we? And a lot of people selling that dream. But I like what you said. You said work and have children, or we could flip that around and say have children and work.
Mm.
And we spoke before the show about that. So I suppose the two things are discussing it as a topic, but also for those who are actually in it, what can they do? So if you've got a mother who's kind of started on that dream and thought, yeah, I can have it all, and has had the kids and is still pushing, and do they keep pushing because eventually something will happen, or do you think they need to take stock and do something now? And what would your advice to them be?
I think I think until you have your first baby, you don't really know how you're going to feel in terms of motherhood. So for me, I remember when I had Bonnie, and I wanted to go back to work, fairly quickly. I think I went back when she was about 8 weeks old, but I didn't go back to 9 to 5. I went back on a Monday morning. I negotiated I actually worked for a chiropractor at the time. I negotiated with him that I could bring her with me on a Monday morning, and on a Friday I would come in on my own. And my husband didn't work on a Friday afternoon, so he had my daughter, because what became very sort of important to me and in the forefront of my mind was I went to look at childcare places, and in the pit of my heart, I could not put my child in there. It just didn't resonate with me. Now, I'm not saying that those things are wrong. For some people, they work really well. But for me, I went along there and I went to look at several of them, and I thought, just made me feel sick. And I thought, this is not my idea of motherhood and raising children. I don't want this for my children. So I had to make a choice. I either go against my values and put my child in that childcare so that I can have my career, or I've got to give up some of that work, not forever, but for a time period, and make it work so that she's with me or her dad most of the time. And to this day, that's still what we do. Like, I know some people, it's a joke, like, am I actually married in the profession? Because I rarely turn up with my husband, right, at an event. Because we may have made the decision that one of us is always with the kids, So
and I suppose that brings up the role of the father in allowing the women to do this. Then
absolutely. So I work just as much as my husband does, but we work at opposite ends to each other so that our home is stable. Our kids are mostly at home. When we do have crossover with work, we have a childminder that comes to our house. So they're eating our food. It's our values. The childminder fits into our values. Now, that's what's really important to us. And then, we bed in time together amongst.
I was going to ask that because I'm glad you mentioned the childminder, because it's you, and then where's the two? So
yeah, we have to bed that in. So, and that can just be something as simple as going for a walk in the evening. I think that's the thing. The connection with your partner doesn't have to be date night every Friday night, because I think that whole concept has pressure in itself.
So true. Right? So true.
If you think about it, it's Thursday night, date night. Let's just say you wake up Thursday morning, particularly if you have a small family, and your kids have been up all night, they're teething, or one of them's had a tummy bug, or they've got a problem. And, the last thing you want to do is have to go on your date night and pretend to, dress yourself up when you're feeling like a piece of poo, right? So, it's just important that you have that connection time. So it doesn't have to be date night.
Is that the ice cream van going past?
It's the ice cream van, yeah. You can tell I live by the sea.
I love it. The date night's an interesting one, because sometimes just a cushion, a cuddle on the sofa is just as good as getting dressed up and going out, right?
Absolutely. Or you take a walk around the block. You book your childminder or your next door neighbor's teenager. They come and sit in your house for an hour, and you just go for a walk. Like for me, we walk on the seafront, and sometimes we'll stop and have a coffee somewhere. Sometimes we'll have an ice cream. Sometimes we'll actually make a hot chocolate at home in a thermos, and we just walk down the beach and sit on it and drink it. So. And then, we do make sure at least once a year we go away overnight.
Right.
Now, once you have a big family, your older kids can look after the little ones. So it does make that a bit easier. Or you just, we have a friend that'll come and stay in the house, or, whatever, but it's just, I think there's this whole trap of falling into being the perfect wife, the perfect mum, the work, all the things. And I just don't think you can manage it all at the same time. I think it's what's it's what killing families, it's what's, you know, crushing our spirit, if you like, you know.
And I think that peer pressure to be that is definitely there, especially with social media and the way the world is. But I think one of the things that stops us from doing what you've said, and I know you'll love this, is judgment.
Mm,
You know, you mentioned a childminder, and you know, I grew up having a nanny, but my wife is like, the concept of that is just alien to her, and she's
mm,
open to it, but her friends are dead against any kind of thing like that. And
mm,
there's so much judgment around how we choose to raise, and I'm not a father, but how we choose to raise our kids,
mm.
that it might prevent people from doing things like that. Is that right?
I think so. I mean, for me, you know, with my older children, I had the same childminder until Alex went to high school. So, you know, 13 years.
Yeah.
She was like part of our family. And I'm sure when those kids get married one day, she'll be on the guest list,
Mm.
right? So it wasn't some stranger taking care of my kids, and it was somebody who'd loved them. She loved them and they loved her, you know. They love her, you know, and they're sort of part of her family. And then we had another lady after that who was with us for 6 years. She'd still be with us now if we hadn't moved away. We moved away from Devon to when we moved to Spain. In Spain, we never had anybody. We just, you know, managed everything amongst ourselves. But since we've been here, same thing. First thing we did is we went onto a babysitter site, and we just got different people to come to our house until we found the person. We were like, that's her, you know.
I'd love
Like,
to see that interview. Is that hardcore or what?
no, because it's not. If for me, it's not an interview
God,
process,
is it?
because you can interview somebody and they give you the right answers.
Yeah.
Right. It's about seeing how they are with your children. So you book them for a little hour session. They go to the park and you ask the kids, interview
Yeah.
them, right? And it's who the kids love to be with. And then, you know, you leave out the food and you see whether they're actually feeding them your food or doing their own thing, you know, because this is what can happen, right? So, yeah. So for me, it's just a gut feeling more than whether they're going to answer the questions, because anyone can answer the questions, right?
Yeah.
You know,
That's...
so yeah, just try them out. And, you know, I'll never forget when Fiona is her name, and she, you know, she arrived and she had this little bandana on. This is when the latest one we've got. And we got home, the girls were in bed, and she was sitting watching football with Noah. He would have been like 11 at the time. And I said to her, oh, do you like football? And she looked at me and she went, but she sat there the whole time with him because he was interested in it,
Yes.
you know, and that for me is lovely. I'm willing to sit with you and be interested in what you're interested in, you know. So that was it for us. We gave her the job. But I think, you know, the key is that we make them part of our family. That's what's important to us. So you know, they're not our employee,
Yeah.
but they're just part of our family. And
I think that's a lovely way to sort of think about it, and probably makes it a lot softer than most people would imagine it to be. You're a leader in the profession, and you're a leader in your own right, and you're a mother of 6, and lovely, but you're a very strong individual. You hold your own very well, and I want to know, is it easy and possible for mothers to be leaders and successful people? Is it easy and possible, or how have you made that happen?
I think it's totally possible. And I think one of the misconceptions about leadership is that you have to be like an outgoing kind of big personality. I don't think that's what makes a leader. I think a leader is just somebody who's able to, you know, lead themselves and live to their core values, and they're able to stand steadfast in those values. And I think, you know, I think there's some great leaders in our profession and just in the world generally who just are strong, quiet people who have an opinion, and they don't waver based on the external influences. So yeah, for me, I haven't found it a problem. I know that my kids, you know, it's interesting. They have this interesting perception of what I do. My 8-year-old actually said to her teacher last year, oh, my mum's really famous. And her teacher came up to me and says, "Oh, Ava said you're really famous. What do you do?" And I'm like, I'm totally not famous. I said, she's been to an event where I've been on the stage and I've got a microphone and I'm picking out raffle tickets. And so because I've got a microphone and I'm standing on the stage, she just thinks I've got some fame, you know. So it's really interesting. I think from the children's perspective, they don't really know and understand what they do. They just see that you go to work. And I think as long as your work is not seen to the children to be secondary, more important than them. Does that make sense? That they're secondary to your career. I think that's important. You know, because I have had my kids say to me, "Oh, you're going away again," you know, if I go away for an event. And you know, have to take that time before or after it to make sure they feel nurtured around me being away, and they understand that that's just, you know, for me to work, that's one of the things. I have to go to Birmingham, I have to go to London, you know, and that's just the way it is. It's not because I don't love them, and I do try and take them with me, but for me, sometimes having your kids with you at work, or this is certainly for me anyway, I am almost pushing them to the side. So I think for me, it's better that I'm able to just have, and it's not all the time, the occasional like, "Oh, I really want to come with you," and make it very clear, no, I have to go and do this. They forget about it within 5 minutes and they're, you know, carry on at home and they're fine. Or if they come with you, then they spend the whole weekend being fobbed off by you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things we try and do in our culture. We think, oh, we've got to have the kids with us. Like I'm a professional mum. I'll just bring my kids with me because I don't want to leave them. I want to be away from them. But then they're with you being kind of fobbed off every 5 seconds.
I think that comes back
Does
to
that make sense?
it does make a lot of sense. And it links around with your point of when you're talking about not judging and being a good mum in terms of knowing what you want to do and being sure in your opinions. And that links straight in with exactly what you said about being a good leader, someone who is just sure of what they're doing and not necessarily shouting about it. So do you think that therefore means that women potentially make better leaders?
I don't necessarily think they do. I think there's great women leaders and there's great male leaders.
Do you think there are enough women leaders, especially in our profession?
I don't think there's enough women leaders, and I think more women need to step forward into that leadership role. I think the difference is men find it easier to step up. Women don't. Women feel that, you know, are hesitant because there's this element of, well, you know, I do have the kids and I do have this and I do have all these responsibilities, so maybe I can't do that. Or
how can we help women step up then? You know, if we got women listening to this call saying, you know, wanting to be better leaders and, you know, understanding where their priorities lie with family, with work, with relationships, how can you encourage women to step up? Because especially in our profession, I think the women listening to this should take heed of it.
I just think they need to just know that they do have something to offer. You know, everybody has something to offer, you know, no matter how long you've been in whatever work you do, everybody has something to offer their own profession. And, you know, knowing that even a small role, you know, let's say you do have a family, even a small role is better than no role if that's going to make you a better mum. So rather than you thinking, oh, I can't do that because I'm going to take time away from my family, and then you're at home with your family full time and you're really unfulfilled, then you're not really a happy mum, are you? So better to think, right, I'm going to shave a little chunk of time off that and I'm going to apply it over here, because when I do this, it fills me up, and then I come back over here and I'm a happier, more positive role model for my children. You know, I've said that to my kids before, you know, like I love them dearly, but if I was a full-time mum, like gardening and cooking all day and just doing the supermarket and the school run, all the rest of it, honestly, I think I'd go nuts.
Can't see you doing that, Melissa. I cannot see that happening.
But I love it as well.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't want to do it all the time, you know. So for me, part of the time doing that, like I take my kids to school pretty much every day. If I don't, my husband does. If I don't pick them up, my husband does. And one day a week, our childminder does. So they're always getting picked up by one of us. But if it was my whole job, yeah, I wouldn't be fulfilled. And I think was at a conference years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And this woman, I can't even remember her name. I wish I'd remembered her name, but she was selling these tapes. That's how long ago it was. It was a tape that you put in a cassette player. And I don't have it anymore. I wish I'd kept it. But it said, rule number 1, mum has fun, right? And I looked at that and I was like, oh, that sounds good. So I took it home and I listened to it. And really what she was talking about was you cannot be an exceptional parent if you are not fulfilled yourself. So next to think, well, actually, that means I want to be a full-time lawyer, right? So if you want to be a full-time lawyer, then you seriously need to think about, you know, when you're going to have children, if you're going to have them, in order for your values to still be imposed upon those kids, what structure are you going to have set up for them?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, you know, you can be the full-time lawyer and the mum, but it's like, is putting them in nursery full-time going to be in line with your core values? Because if it's not, then you're going to end up being an unhappy lawyer because you're at work and in the back of your mind, this conflict over your parenting side is going on.
And that, I think that's where everything we've spoken to today comes back to being sure of your values and acting upon those in a congruent way. And I like what you said a minute ago about even if you have a small role, understanding how significant that is, because a very underplayed role in our profession is the role of the CAs, the chiropractic assistants, and you help them a lot. And there's a lot of chiropractors who show off how well they're doing in practice, but it wouldn't happen if it wasn't for their team. And I certainly know my practice wouldn't run without my team. So, you know, someone who's got a smaller role or a perceived smaller role, how can they see it as being more significant? How can they really feel like they are doing the right thing?
I just think it comes down, like you say, to your values, like what's important to you. You know, if you don't know what your values are, you can do something really simple like a DeMartini values survey. I can't remember the name of it, but I was really shocked when I did that years ago, and I realized that, you know, the things that I valued were not what I thought I valued. And it just by sort of seeing that really helped me think, oh, wow, I need to kind of make some tweaks to my life because I'm not working in line with my core values. And then that's when you get tired and you get run down and you just get sort of, you know, dragged into this rut. But I think, you know, if work is as important to you as family, you've got to have both of those things in your life.
Yeah.
But they can't be 2 full-time jobs. That's what I'm trying to say about you can't have it all. Like being a mum is a full-time job, right? So if you're going to work, then your mum part can't be full-time, but how much is it going to be in order to balance how much work you've got to have?
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I think that's where the struggle is, where we're trying to have 5 full-time jobs in our life. And that's why we're running around exhausted, ragged, and unhappy and unfulfilled, because we're just not, you know.
And it's important for people to reflect that. And you say DeMartini stuff's brilliant because he talks about the social idealisms and the fact that the shoulds come up all the time. And I'm not, you know, I should be a good mum, therefore I should stay at home, or I should be, you know, a good employee, therefore I should work hard. And it's understanding, well, you're right, what are your true values? You know, do you want to or should you? And that's important self-reflection, I think.
It is really important. And I think, you know, what's a good mum? What's a good mum? Is a good mum somebody who bakes and somebody who's there at school pick up and school drop off and every play and is sewing the costume and doing, is that a good mum? I mean, I've got some friends who were raised like that who hate their parents, right? So what is a good mum, right?
Yeah.
You know, for me, my goal, and I really hope I achieve it. And, you know, I've made a ton of mistakes. Don't get me wrong. And just ask my kids, right? But I think the goal for me is I want to have a healthy and happy relationship with my adult children. That's always been my goal from day one. So whether or not I'm sewing costumes or baking cakes or going to I see those parents at the playground on a cold winter's day. They're at the playground for 2 hours with their kids. I am not one of those mothers because I can't stand it, right? Now, some people would say that's really selfish, but it fills me with so much horror that I would just be miserable for the whole day if I had to spend 2 hours in a playground pushing the kids on the swing and it's blowing a gale. Like, it's just not me. Does that make me a bad mum? Because I won't do that with my kids.
And I think it's lovely how you're saying your aim is to cultivate a good adult relationship. I think it's a lovely statement to make and a lovely thing to aim for.
Mm. And it takes work, because also all your kids are so different. So what one needs, another doesn't.
Mm.
And it's about trying to navigate, how can I get the balance right here with the communication with this child? Like because I have 3 adult children, and one of my adult children, I can go for 6 weeks and he won't call me, but I'm just not offended by that.
Mm.
It's just who he is. Yet I know if he needs my counsel or my help or my advice or just, I'm the person he calls. So I think that's the thing too. It's like understanding that it's, it doesn't have to be ringing at Sunday at 6:00. Like, to me, that's a pressure.
Yeah.
As an adult, oh God, I've got to ring my mum, then it's almost like a duty rather than, oh, I'd really like to ring my mum to speak to her,
Yeah.
Life's busy and so I think that's certainly where I'm at anyway. Maybe you should interview them, see what they think.
I've interviewed my dad, but I should interview my mum. That'd be an interesting one to do. Mum, do you like me? See what she says.
I think it's a really good thing, and even one of the things I do from time to time, and we often try and do it on New Year's, actually, when people do these New Year's resolutions. What I try and do with my kids is say, tell me one thing I've done good this year and tell me one thing I can do better at.
Wow.
And I think that it's interesting the things they think you're doing good at are often not what you think. And one of my kids said to me a couple of years ago that what I could do better at is listen to them. And I was like, listen to you? Like, I was like really taken aback.
Wow.
Here, right? But I get what they were saying because I've always worked from home. I am often home, but I'm not present. Right? So I'll be typing on the computer or I'll be reading an article. So I'm there, but I'm not actually there with them.
Yeah.
So I had in my mind, oh, I work from home, so I'm always around for the children. Whereas I was kidding myself that I was always around for the children. I was half there for them. So I learned to tune them out. And once you learn to tune out your children because you're working, then you start tuning them out when you're cooking, or tuning them out when you go to the beach, or tuning them out when you're on a walk. You with me?
Yeah.
And it's a really good wake-up call for me. I thought, right, I need to close my computer and work's done. Even though I'm at home, I had to create that separation.
I think that's a really important point, and probably the best, like, humble to listen to that, I suppose, and humble to take that on. And I think all the advice that you've given today has really been honest, but it does come back down to the same values thing. If you had to wrap it up, and I think the last thing you said is probably the best thing that I've taken away from today. But if you had to wrap it up in a sentence or a piece of advice, what would you say to the mothers out there, or even the parents out there? What would you say in terms of those who want to achieve great things but don't want to sacrifice family at the same time?
I think for me, the key is to run your home and your life according to you and not anybody else, and nobody else's values or judgments or opinions. For me, that's key. It's one of the reasons I've never gone to mothers groups. I think they're a hothouse for judgment, and they're a hothouse for husband bashing, And it's not helpful, to stay in that place of, oh God, I can't say that because Betty's going to go, oh, and such and such has got a fever. Have you given them Calpol? Oh, I don't use Calpol. What do you mean you don't use Calpol? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, this is the kind of breeding ground that can go on with parenting. So I think only ask advice or share information about what you're doing with your parenting with people that you want to parent like.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's the same even if you're a chiropractor. If you want to be a better chiropractor, find the chiropractor you want to be like. And that's the person you follow, not George down the road who's not doing anything near what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with parenting. Find a parent, and it may not be your own, right? It may not be your own parents, but there'll be somebody out there who's raised children in the way that you want to. They're the people you go to for counsel.
Yeah.
Not your mother's group whose values are not aligned with you.
It makes a lot of sense, and thank you for that. And I'd say you're someone who's created a lot of, and your course is clarity. You created a lot of clarity for me over the years, and you have a real great way of just getting straight to the point. So I appreciate that. If people want to find out more about you or get in touch with you, if they don't know how to already, I'm surprised. But how can they find out more about what you do and what you run?
So in terms of work, you can just go to my website, melissasanford.com, or you can just look me up on Facebook. And I don't post a lot on Facebook, but you can certainly chat to me via instant message.
Well, we'll put your details in the show notes. And Melissa, thank you very much for being on the show today. I really appreciate your openness, your honesty, and your wisdom. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Perfect. Sometimes when I press stop recording, it shuts down. So I'll just stop the recording.